Hi, everybody. Welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 161 for July 7th, 2011. I'm Ryan Shrout.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
And I'm Al Malventano.
We are going to take you through the last week's worth of hardware news and information. We didn't have a whole lot of new products actually kind of launch or reviews go up really this week, but what we didn't get to talk about last week is obviously going to be the main focus this week. Bad timing on the review launch because I think the NBA was only a couple of hours after we actually recorded last week's podcast. But this week we actually get to discuss the AMD A-series APU on the desktop world. I guess they only officially launched two of these processors, the A8-3850 and the A630-650. Is that right, Josh?
Yes.
So only two of those. They are available for purchase now, so they were available within the week, which is good news. Close to their or almost right at their estimated retail pricing. So we've talked about the Llano architecture quite a bit in the last few weeks when we talked about the mobility products. Nothing has changed really in that regard, going from the notebook version to the desktop version. The few things that have changed are the frequencies have gone up a little bit. The TDPs have obviously gone up. There's a 100-watt and a 65-watt version of the desktop part. Memory speed and bandwidth goes up a little bit as well, up to as high as 1,866 megahertz on the DDR3 memory there. The two products that launched are interesting in that they do not include turbo core technology. That is AMD's kind of rival technology to turbo boost that Intel has, where it will allow cores to use more power than default if there's only one thread running or only two threads running. Their turbo core technology also has to balance the power between what the GPU portion and CPU portion is doing, and it does some math there. It tends to give preference to the GPU because that assumes if you're running the GPU that you're doing something that is very GPU intense, right? Either gaming or some type of GPU compute application. But the two processors that are actually for sale today, the 3850 and 3650, do not actually have support for that in it. The difference being those are the 100-watt parts. The 65-watt parts are the 3800 and the 3600, and those have variable clock speeds. The lower one is at 2.1 to 2.4, and the higher one is 2.4 to 2.7. Those are both the 64-watt part or 65-watt parts. They're all quad-core, 4 megs L2 cache, and then the other differences in the GPU specs: 400 shaders on the A8s and 320 shaders on the A6. And clock speeds vary and all that kind of stuff. You can check out the review if you want to see all the detailed tables that have all that type of information. New chipsets, new motherboards. I've got a Gigabyte GA A75 UD4H shown here. Looks like any other motherboard we're used to seeing. It does have two PCI Express slots, although I will have to say if you are contemplating Crossfire on this platform, you're doing it wrong. It is a new socket. You do have to get a new motherboard. This is not an AM2 or an AM3 Plus socket. It's socket FM1, 905 pins, according to AMD. Let's see. Are there any other technical details about the part that maybe I glossed over that you wanted to mention, Josh, before I get into kind of like the performance issue?
The first mass-produced chipset with USB 3.0, courtesy of buying some technology from NEC, I believe.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. That's nice.
Oh,
so
also,
I guess
it's got six SATA 6 ports too. So it's kind of a coup for AMD.
It is. So Intel does not have anything compared to that. Also, I guess 32 nanometer process technology that remains the same. The one thing that I guess changed after the article published was the transistor count in the slides before the article went up. When we were writing the article, said about 1 billion. And they compared it to the about 1 billion transistors in the Intel Sandy Bridge processors. Well, it turns out, in AMD's world, about 1 billion is the same as 1.45 billion, which is the actual transistor count that I didn't find out until after our article went up. So there are 1.5 billion transistors on the quad-core Llano APU, and I think it's like 992 million on Sandy Bridge.
And the difference in die size difference between those two is not much, so that's kind of
How are they able to do
tightly
that?
packed that GPU is and their cache.
What benefits or downsides is there because of that tightly packed? Does that kind of bring us into like the power issue that they're having maybe?
Perhaps. It's hard to say because the differences between Intel's 32-nanometer process and what AMD uses is just kind of worlds apart. I mean, there are some similarities. That they use a lot of the same light sources, some of the same machinery. But when you talk about SRAM density and the actual pitches in between transistors and whatnot, the AMD actually has a really competitive solution with the GlobalFoundries 32 nanometer. And that was developed with like Motorola and IBM and Elpida and Infineon and all these other guys. So
Okay.
it's hard to say. Obviously their clock speed is not as great on the CPU side because we've got the i5s and i3s running at 3.1, 3.2 gigahertz. These are kind of struggling to maintain 100-watt TDPs at 2.9 gigahertz. Then again, it's got that big old hunk of Radeon silicon in there that
400 shader processors is a lot.
Yeah, 400.
So yeah, that's kind of like the general specs. We got a lot more details in the story on the website. Obviously, go ahead and check that out. In terms of performance, not a big surprise here. What we found, very similar to what we saw on the notebook side. If you look through our review, I think we did a really good job of kind of summarizing everything. We evaluate performance from several aspects. We look at general processor performance. How well did the slightly revamped STARS cores on the A8-3850 compare to the x86 performance of Sandy Bridge? We look at the graphics performance. Does the GPU portion of Llano really have the power to bring entry-level discrete graphics, which is something AMD keeps claiming? Memory performance. Now the memory controller is being used for both the x86 and the GPU cores on the AMD side for the first time. How does memory speed affect the overall performance? That was kind of a surprise. Dual graphics performance, kind of the hybrid crossfire option there. We look at some of those benefits. And the power consumption, how does Llano core compare to budget-priced Sandy Bridge processors? What's interesting to keep in mind is the A8-3850 is a 100-watt part, as Josh was just saying. The Sandy Bridge Core i3-2100 that we use as our comparison processor is actually a 65-watt part. So all the performance that it has, it's available at a rated wattage advantage of 35 watts. So it's not as big a deal in the desktop form factor as it is in the mobile form factor, but it's still something to keep an eye on. We'll talk about overclocking and stuff later in the podcast, too, after we get to some other stories. So, end result, CPU performance, not that great. Just as we 2.9 gigahertz, STARS cores. Josh and I had this discussion before the article went up. It's like, when was the STAR cores launched? January of 2008, I think, was the first Phenom part. Is that right? So it was kind of basically like
the 2007. 2.3 gigahertz Phenom.
Yeah. And I called it 2007 technology. If it launched in January 2008, it was obviously based on 2007 technology. So in terms of CPU performance, it's not able to keep up with Sandy Bridge. The AMD guys kept reiterating to me over and over again, it's like, yes, it's slower than Sandy Bridge if you look at the benchmark numbers, but is there anything you cannot do on Llano? And, it's a fair point. Can you still watch videos? Can you still encode videos? Yes. Is there anything you can't do from a CPU computing perspective that you can do on Sandy Bridge? And the answer is no, but you can do it faster on Sandy Bridge.
Yeah, but Can you do a handstand still, Ryan? I mean, really, with Llano?
No, I cannot. No, I couldn't with a Llano or a Sandy Bridge processor. So the CPU performance the CPU performance is bad. It's not awful. It's not like Atom processor. It's not Brazos or anything like that. It's a comfortable step above anything like that. And it actually wins a couple of benchmarks in applications that take advantage of the true quad core at its best. Because, again, the Core i3-2100 is only a dual-core part. It's 2 cores, hyper-threaded, 4 threads. But it still wins the majority of our tests. Now, AMD made that argument because if you look at the graphics portions of the Sandy Bridge versus Llano, you'll see that Sandy Bridge can't run many DX10 games because of poor driver support or very poor performance. And it can't run DX11 titles at all because it doesn't have that technology. My argument is DirectX 11 is not very prevalent yet. It's not required for for any games. There's no games that are DX11 only, unless you count like the AVP Benchmark and 3D Mark 11, which we don't. So you still have that option. All that being said, Llano's graphics performance kicks the crap out of Sandy Bridge. I mean, not even close. The A83850 is an average. It's at its lowest benefit. Its lowest advantage is 2x the Core i3-2100, and its best advantage is around 4x. So it's a huge performance advantage on the GPU side. So if you're doing any kind of gaming at all, Llano is the way to go. I don't think there's any debate about that anymore. If your goal is gaming on a system that's going to be under $500, that you want it all to be integrated and you don't want to have a discrete graphics card, then Llano beats out the low end Sandy Bridge parts very easily.
Is that really a market?
Hey, you know what? Zynga sold for $1 billion. Did an IPO for $1 billion. So damn it, it's a market for casual games.
Okay,
now,
and on live I can see the same agreement, and frankly, it is sitting in the price range of a console.
Yes.
That's the only thing I can really see, is that it's not so much competing against Sandy Bridges, it's competing against consoles. Hey, look, for this cheap, boom, you can buy a system that will play everything your stupid PS3, Xbox,
I agree with you that the market
that's
of
sort of the
PC
only thing I
gamers,
can get.
I agree with you. There's a market of PC gamers that don't want discrete graphics card, and it's not. I don't think that's. It's not that market is small. It's that market doesn't know that it itself exists. Would be my guess. Anybody that buys a PC at a big box retailer store, they don't really know what they're buying necessarily, and they don't have that capability to play games in nearly the amount of in nearly the type of quality of experiences you would get with a Llano-based system. And so it's really going to come down to, are the OEMs going to be able to sell are they going to want to sell these systems rather than Intel's based systems to these consumers, knowing that they are going to have that advantage down the road. It's kind of a mix. Now, we've gotten some fairly good responses in our comment sections and in emails into this podcast and This Week in Computer Hardware, the show I do with Patrick Norton, about, this is perfect. We were trying to buy an easy system, a low-cost system for my sister, my mom, my kids. They play basic games, but they don't want to do this. This is the advantage they have there.
Dude, you just said easy and my sister.
Yes, but there are words between them.
Oh,
right?
Well, that's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, if you look at the benchmark, Civ 5 was tested, Dirt 3, Left 4 Dead 2, StarCraft 2, and I use that collection of games because they are more mainstream than, say, trying to play Crysis 2 or something like this, which it would be able to do, but obviously at pretty low image quality settings and that kind of stuff. So, look at a game like StarCraft 2, you get 50 frames per second on Llano, but you get 19 frames per second on Sandy Bridge at 1680 by 1050 medium quality settings. That's a huge difference. That's playable versus not playable. And that's what AMD's point was, is that the processor is slower. They don't want to admit it, but it is. But their argument is, well, there's nothing you can't do, but there are things you can't do on Sandy Bridge. So check out the game.
Are they going to use StarCraft as a gateway drug?
They could.
You can't play this game on the console, but for the same price, you can play this StarCraft game with your friends.
Exactly. Real friends.
Yeah, I think AMD and NVIDIA really need to get into the whole Zynga, group and say, let's push a little 3D. Let's do simple at first. Shoot that in.
I don't want NVIDIA in there because then they'll push physics on them.
Yeah, well, true.
Other interesting performance issues are interesting performance notes with Llano. If you look at the page where we test memory performance, this is one of those things where when people were building systems, I pretty much say, I just get DDR3 1333. It's not going to make a difference for games. It's not going to make a difference for types of applications. That's not really the case anymore with the A-series APU. We tested DDR 1333, 1600, and 1866 at different timings on those marks. But the gaming performance on Llano, because of those memory differences, actually scales pretty impressively. The best example, again, is StarCraft 2, which is 15% faster if you boost up to 1600 megahertz memory, and it's almost 25% faster if you go at 1866. Now, obviously, you have to judge how much more are you willing to pay for 1866 capable memory versus 1333 capable memory, because these are, again, budget systems. But if you happen to have memory, or you're comfortable, tweaking with settings, trying to overclock your memory, even if it might not be, have a default rating and setting that you can just switch on 1866, you can get pretty good performance gains out of just overclocking your memory. And we'll talk a little bit later about the video we just posted that shows overclocking the processor, how much gaming performance improves from that. So you start to combine some of these different things: higher clocked memory, overclocked GPU cores and CPU cores, and it's easy to see where you could get some noticeable performance gains here.
And something I'd like to add.
Yeah.
Going along the memory, we contacted G-Skill, and they were very kind enough to send a quantity of 4 1866 DIMMs, 4x4 gigabyte, and we're going to be checking out what going from 2 to 4 DIMMs on such a system does. Now, 16 gigs on a Llano system seems a little overkill.
Maybe.
But what we're really kind of interested... Pardon?
Yeah, maybe just a little.
Just, a small amount. Because usually 4 gigs will do fine for most people. But what we're interested in is the things that AMD has done to the memory controller. Because I know in previous generations products that once you start populating 4 DIMMs with their products, performance actually increases, even though they oftentimes have to run at a slower bandwidth, and that is because they kind of create these virtual memory channels, kind of like, I don't know if you remember VCSD RAM from about 10 years ago that VIA was trying to push, and it never got any traction whatsoever. Yeah. Well, this is something that AMD is kind of does is they don't call it virtual channels, but there's better interleaving involved when you have more memory DIMMs in there. So this is something that we're going to check out. I know that I've talked about G-Skill memory in the past because they've had some amazing deals, and they're really pushing the price performance a lot. So it's going to be interesting to see how Llano works with so damn much fast memory.
Aren't you spending more on the memory than you are on the CPU?
Memory is what, $150? $150 for 16 gigs.
That's not bad at all.
That's crazy cheap.
It's
brilliant.
Insane how cheap.
What I'm more curious to see, though, Josh, is if you end up with any kind of performance quirkiness, because usually if you start doing that much memory, first of all, when you go up to 4 gig on a single slot there, that you're already sort of pushing like the, I don't want to say fan out for this particular thing, but it becomes fan out when you go to something like using all 4 slots with crazy large DIMMs, right?
Because, that is something that we want to test out. We want to see. I mean, are you going to get a performance increase from doing such a thing? Because, most single chip, with quad cores, they only take 8 to 12 gigabytes per second of bandwidth at max. Because, in modern processors, you usually have large amounts of L2 and even L3 cache. And so it doesn't access local memory nearly as much as previous processor architectures have. So it's interesting to see that we have a product here that will actually possibly utilize that kind of memory. So it's going to be interesting to see, especially since you can get up to 512 megs of memory that goes directly to the GPU with this. So it's going to be kind of an interesting experiment.
Cool. I guess there's some other things we talk about in the review. Dual graphics, which is the hybrid crossfire type technology. If you get like a low-cost discrete GPU, like say this Radeon 6450, works with the 6450, 6570, and 6670 cards as of today. You can pair up the GPU performance of these discrete cards with the GPU integrated in the Llano processor, and you get performance boosts of some percentage, obviously based on what this says. We did our testing with the 6670, and that card is about $100 retail. It's a little bit overpowered for this use. What we found was the 6670 was so much faster than the 3850, the HD 6550D is what they call the Radeon 400 core part in Llano. It's so much faster than that that the performance gains you get were kind of minimized, right? 10%, 15%, something like that. If you have a card, if you buy a $50...
break occasionally?
Yes. We did see some of that as well, that I think they were able to address with the 11.6b driver that came out today. So we did see some weird things where the screen would be split in half, like the left side of the screen would be on the right half of the monitor and the right side of the screen would be on the left part of the monitor. But the game would function completely normally otherwise. Like, and it actually did that on the Windows desktop a couple times too. But if you have a 6450 or 6570, you'll see a higher performance scaling because they're much closer together. The only downside to this that I think is it doesn't work with DX9 games. It only works on DX10 or DX11 titles, which I think is kind of a letdown. The AMD stance is people aren't building DX10 games anymore. They're focusing on DX11, and it was too much work and time to commit to making sure this technology worked with DirectX 9. And I don't really buy that excuse because the Crossfire technology already exists and hybrid Crossfire has already existed. And it seems to me that DX11 games that are going to be exclusively DX11 games, in other words, even if you run them at low-quality settings, they're going to be running under DX11 code path versus DX9 code path. Seems like they're a little bit further out than what AMD wants to believe. I still think there are tons of DX9 titles available today, and DX9 titles are still going to be coming out that are going to have a DX9 code path and DX1011 on the other side. So that's a little bit disappointing. But we have another video we're planning on for next week that looks at the 6570 paired with the Llano APU as well. So that's kind of an overall summary of things. Check out the review if you want all of the information. My general summary of the launch of Llano APU is I'm trying to find the spot where I talked about this. The problem AMD has is they built a processor for 3 years from now, 2 years from now, which is good for people who are willing to buy this and save that hardware. But it's not good if they're trying to sell systems today. The GPU in this part is awesome. It's impressive. The CPU portion is not. But unfortunately for AMD today, the mindset of people and the mindset of OEMs, the mindset of businesses and educational establishments is CPU performance. We talked about all that Babco, Sysmark crap over the last couple of weeks, right? But the point is AMD is backing themselves away from that because they realize their CPU can't compete there, and they want people to use these GPU accelerated applications. The problem is there's just not a lot of them there, and they're not widespread enough to really make an impact. If we were able to judge these processors' performance based on the GPU, the A8 3850 would sell for $500 because it's much faster than the best integrated graphics on the best Sandy Bridge processor that's available. But it's selling for $135. Why? Because that is the price they had to go to even remain in the picture in terms of CPU performance. So I think the technology and the path that they're taking is correct. I don't want to say this product is early because it's late in terms of when they were supposed to release it. What's late is the updated CPU cores and technology necessary to make it compete on an overall platform. And it's very possible from this point forward that AMD has become, their stance is now, well, we're not going to be able to keep up on CPU performance. We're pushing GPU all the way. We're going to have competent CPU cores. That's the best we're going to be able to do. We're never going to be able to spend the money in the R&D and the process technology to catch up with Intel. So we'll have to see in 2012 when Trinity comes out, what we get out of that. We'll have to see later this year when Bulldozer comes out, how those CPU cores are going to compare. But there's a lot in flux for AMD right now,
including not having a CEO for the past 6 months.
Yeah,
also very true.
Really weird.
I'm kind of wondering if they're not going to invite Dirt back and say, hey, you know what?
All is forgiven.
Your roadmap wasn't so bad. Come on back. Come on back.
All right. We're going to take a quick break to thank today's sponsor. But before we do that, I just want to point everybody out. We did have another review go up on the site this week. It is the Samsung Droid Charge review. That is a 4G Android cell phone, obviously. Josh and Jeremy were raving about this for weeks, so we finally thought we would get a review sample and put it through the paces there. Matt Smith did a very good job on that. If you're interested in what the Droid Charge offers on the Verizon 4G LTE network, sorry to say that as of July 7th, you can no longer get the unlimited data plan. So now you're on the tiered data plans that they started. But, hey, you can still have really fast speeds if you want to check that out. Do so. But now let's take a break here from MSI for today's ad spot, and we'll be right back. All right, thank you, MSI, for that. Now, let's get into a few other things. We're going to talk with Alan again about the RevoDrive 3. Not going to go through the whole review again. Obviously, we talked about that last week. But there were some comments and questions that came up about the content, about the product, rather, and about Alan's article that we thought were worth addressing here. Alan? All
right, so, just a few things that seems like the masses could benefit from these little tidbits here.
Sure.
Somebody mentioned, what's the practicality of having this in RAID 5 or in some form of a RAID configuration that has a parity to it. And basically, the gist of my reply is, and by the way, all these that we're going to cover here are in the comments section under the RevoDrive 3 article. If you're going for blazing fast speed that this kind of card is going to give you, your best bet is going for redundancy in the form of another one of the same card. You don't want to add all the overhead that you're going to get from RAID 5 or any kind of parity, parity-related RAID kind of a solution. The chip that's on the RevoDrive 3, I'm told, is capable of RAID 5, so it's actually able to do the parity overhead, and it's supposed to not even be much of a performance hit if it does so. But again, it's if you're gonna suck up a quarter of the capacity of the unit, you're probably going to end up, falling short from whatever it is you were trying to do anyway. Realize also you can only do that kind of a configuration on RevoDrive 3 it would have to be an X2, right? Because if it was not an X2 model, that only has 2 solid-state drives, so the best you're going to do there is, just a striped mirror, just a mirrored RAID. So that would really be bad for, your capacity because it would cut it in half. And the biggest point out of that is if you're so worried about redundancy to eliminate any kind of single point failure, well, the rest of the card is a single point failure. The only thing you're being redundant on is anything from the SandForces down to their flash that's connected to them. So you still have things that can take down your system. So if you're so die hard on redundancy, the extra far end of that extreme would be another complete system with another RevoDrive sitting there in a cluster, another complete computer. But the midpoint there, probably most cost-effective as well, is just to have one system, 2 RevoDrive 3s, have them mirrored at the OS level. That way, if one of the cards goes down for any reason, you're still covered.
Gotcha.
Something else, which is actually, I saw this coming on an email as well as a comment, or a similar kind of thing on email. Somebody said, I'll just buy insert name of RAID card, and I'll just buy 4 Vertex 3s, and I'll just hook them up, then I'll be good to go. Sort of missing the point, because any RAID card I've seen that has any kind of cache memory to it, the controller adds so much overhead to it that you'll almost never see greater performance, regardless of how many solid-state drives are connected. It'll almost never bypass the performance, like IOs per second performance of one solid-state drive, just because the processor it acts like its own controller, right? The architecture that OCZ is using is very specific to reducing the overhead and the latency, and it doesn't use any kind of cache memory. It's just a straight shot. Not only that, but it's tuned to make it as fast as possible as far as reorganizing or restacking those commands as they're going from the host system over to each SandForce controller. So one good example is the best I've ever gotten out of an Eureka RAID card, like a high-end Eureka, is like 50 or 60,000 IOs per second, and we're talking like enterprise class. This is like about as good as they can get, kind of thing. That's equivalent to one good solid-state drive, whereas the Revo pulls 200,000 IOs per second, which is pretty crazy. Yeah. And also there was one specific thing commented. They said the 3 were a 9750. Which is a pretty cheap, surprisingly cheap. It's like less than $400. It's a 4-port SAS and serial ATA 6 gigabit compatible RAID card, which is pretty good stuff. But then all I had to do was look at the specs real quick, and I noticed that it's only rated for 1.1 gigabytes per second on sequential writes, whereas the RevoDrive 3 was pulling close to 1.6. So you just took a 50% hit on your sequential write performance. So that's not even talking about IOs per second performance. That's just, straight line speed. And it still, couldn't keep up to what RevoDrive 3 could do. And then there was one, the real quick, the last one was Windows architecture does not support passing trim through a store port driver. Store port and SCSI port drivers are the driver architecture that RAID solutions will typically use.
Yeah.
Or any kind of a SCSI RAID controller, or just a SCSI regular, before RAID kind of controllers. Initially it was called SCSI port, and that stuck with us for a really long time, and then Microsoft sort of advanced on that and reduced some of the overhead involved, and they came out with this thing called store port. I'm not sure on SCSI port, but store port is definitely the way you want to go for any kind of high I/O per second device. However, store port does not support passing trim yet. So that's not the controller's fault. That's not OCZ's fault. That's actually Microsoft's fault because it's not implemented at the OS kernel level.
Damn you, Microsoft!
Yeah. But,
damn you! You blew it all up!
But here, something like this, though, can come in the form of like a hotfix. It's not necessarily going to be wait till Windows 8 or anything crazy like that. It should be something that that can be service pack or hotfix kind of a thing. And I think there's like testing or beta, level support for it already. That that some companies are probably using to test these devices, because there's so many of these things out there now that are trying to pass trim.
Right.
Think of any halfway decent or better RAID controller wants to be able to pass trim to their connected solid-state drive. So it's not just OCZ that's leaning on Microsoft for this. It's going to be any Arica, High Point, any RAID card manufacturer out there. And there's my piece. Stuff on the Revo.
What else are people looking forward to this week in the stores?
Well, we've got actually you and I are tag teaming Droid. Yeah.
A lot of storage in the Drobo.
Yeah. And easy and tag team.
So for those who listen to the podcast know that Ryan has a propensity for destroying anything that is a RAID.
Yep.
He's
him.
Gone through.
Hate them all.
It's I don't know. There's a little thundercloud that just hangs out right over Ryan's office, and it zaps just his PC that has RAID.
It's RAID!
I think RAID is a sham. I think it's been fooling us all for decades.
Yeah, yeah. So Ryan is going to try to break a Drobo FS, specifically a 5-band.
I don't even have to try. It just happens around me. So
we'll see.
We'll see if the Drobo breaks.
After all the work I tried to break the 8-bay Drobo Pro, and now I'm going to try to break this thing and then send it to Ryan. Ryan's going to try to break it.
Yep.
Hopefully he has better luck with that than he has of the 5 other iterations of RAID that he has destroyed.
100% agree.
Yes. And,
Force GT coming soon?
Say again?
Force GT. Corsair
okay.
Force GT?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay.
Not yet.
All right.
It's 3 terabyte hard drives.
More 3 terabyte hard drives. All right.
A bunch of them altogether.
Oh, okay. All right. Let's see what else happened in the world. VIA Technologies to sell off its stake in S3 Graphics. Good news, bad news, Josh? About 5 years too late?
It's hard to say because, one, HTC doesn't have any chip manufacturing capabilities that I'm aware of. They use chips from everybody else and don't make their own. Now, HTC is obviously... Now, VIA makes their own chips, so shut it. Anyway, HTC, they trying to do some things here. Maybe will they put together a team and get an ARM license and integrate S3 graphics into that so that they don't have to go out to NVIDIA, TI, who else? The OMAP people, they're TI, right? Snapdragon, Qualcomm.
Yep, those guys.
Anybody else who raises their beastly little head, and HTC still sell a integrated product for a few dollars. I don't know.
So VIA acquired S3 in 2001.
Correct.
Okay, I was, for some reason, all the way back then, I was thinking that these companies were always together, that VIA kind of spawned S3, but obviously not the case. Yeah.
And then I guess in 2005, they split S3 stock kind of apart, and WTI, which is an investment firm, bought up a little bit more than half. Pardon?
I wonder what they're going to do with S3.
I don't know, but here's the interesting part. The gal who's the CEO or chairman or something of HTC is married to the CEO of VIA.
Really? Convenient.
Interesting, which is why VIA is saying we're still going to be using S3 technology in our parts going forward.
In the United States,
well,
legal.
They do own the IP, don't they?
Boy, you'd have to talk to the lawyers, so it's kind of hard to say. I don't know.
HTC seems to be interested in acquiring
Chinwei, or whatever his name is has got a nice licensing agreement with his wife's company. So, it's probably legal, ethical, who knows? But who cares? It's only VIA.
Not our concern, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. All right, another bit of news here. We got some more information on AMD Hondo, which is an awkward name. It's not Honda.
You're not a John Wayne fan, are you?
No, I'm not, to be honest with you.
You have no clue why it's a music.
No, please enlighten me about the reference
and
joke. The technology. No, probably not.
That's close to... Okay, never mind then.
No. Is it family-friendly, Josh?
It is.
Okay, go ahead.
So anyway, a guy, every time he passes gas, it goes Honda. And he thinks this is very strange because it shouldn't sound like this. So he goes to the doctor. Doctor said every time he passes gas, it goes Honda. Doctor scratches his head, gets out his book, and says, you've got a abscess in your bowel. And he's like, well, how do you know that? It's like it says right here, abscess makes the fart go Honda.
Insert.
Anyway, Honda,
here, right?
Hondo, anyway.
Wow.
And you pulled that out of your...
Hondo.
Anyways, Hondo.
Damn, killed him.
Hondo we know about thanks to a nice leak on the internet. It's the new ultra-low power Brazos chip that we've sort of been waiting a little bit to see because the initial one that came out wasn't exactly wonderful. This one they're talking about less than 4 watts. Streaming 720p video with no problems on this designed to be a fanless chip is about 2.5 watts TDP, which is, not quite cell phone territory. We're still definitely talking tablets, but not bad. Yeah, they added an extra 1.5 watts on the TDP for streaming it wirelessly. And you're looking at about a 4.5 watt part, which really kind of undercuts just about anything Intel's got on the market right now. It's sort of almost straddling the cell phone line. Right. About 2 watts TDP total going full out on a cell phone as I think about what you want. Whereas this is going to do it a little bit better. But it is going to play 720p video once we see it because we're looking at a 1 gigahertz proper APU with a dual-core bulldozer core based, and the GPU on that will be doing 276 megahertz. So fairly impressive for what is going to be a fanless chip. It's going to be a little while. We're probably going to see this come out around the same time as Windows 8 comes out in 2012, at least for AMD's sake. We hope we do. There's a good chance it will because it's still in the 40 nanometer process. They're not really going for a shrink. They're just going for optimization of the currently existing Brazos and Ontario. So hopefully they can actually put this out bang on, and this leak was one of those semi-intentional pokes at the competition to say, hey, we're pretty confident this is going to come out, so we're going to do a little leak somewhere, knowing full well it's going to be on the internet everywhere in no time at all.
My question, based on this kind of information, Intel has struggled in the tablet cell phone markets. They've been talking about it for a while. Do we think AMD was able to catch up to the not quite ready state that Intel has been struggling to get in for the last 5 years? I mean, with a about 2-watt part, I mean, does that seem reasonable? Josh, Jeremy, anybody?
Well, we're waiting for Ivy Bridge, aren't we?
Oh. What?
Ivy Bridge is mainstream stuff. So, I mean, we're talking Atom coming up. I guess you're right. We did talk about Ivy Bridge. Their plans.
There is going to be a low-power version of it. That's sort of their next hope, as far as I understand, is this redone
I remember that.
And then about 2013, 2014, they're going to shrink it down to 22 nanometer, in which case we're talking about a significantly dropped power consumption, but that's a long ways off.
Josh?
I think this is entirely reasonable because of two things. One, the core logic that they were using for the original Brazos was a little bit higher TDP than they really wanted. I mean, it pulled about 7 watts at load. Now, what they've done is they've taken that chip, they've pared it down, they've either removed or just disabled portions of it that they really don't need. What tablet needs 6 SATA ports? SATA 6 at that. I mean, what tablet needs all of these, like parallel ports, some of these I/O things that, excuse me, just do not exist on a tablet. And so they've been able to cut that down, and also they've been able to work with TSMC. TSMC's also improved their 40 nanometer process. Now that they have about a year of actual production under their belts with this CPU and the graphics portion on Brazos, they've done just exactly what NVIDIA did with Tegra 2 rather. They have the Cal-L is the quad core with a much higher performance graphics processor, and it takes up the same amount of TDP as the original Tegra 2, which is a dual core and had a less complex graphics. They were able
about 2 watts, right?
Yeah, well, it's about half a watt is what those are, but still, they were able to do a lot with just getting to know this process. TSMC has been working on the process. A lot of things have just come together so that AMD theoretically could get this 1 gigahertz dual core with a pretty hefty graphics processor down to 2 watts, and it just takes a little bit work. Takes a little bit more aggressive power gating, a little bit more aggressive BIOS type optimizations to get the power consumption down and to either declock or shut off portions of this chip as much as possible and not totally destroy performance. And they had a year to work on this, and I totally see it as possible. And in fact, not only have they caught up with Intel, but hopefully they've somewhat exceeded it, because Intel's tablet chip of Atom that they're trying to do is like a single core. It's not clocked all that high. It's still a 5 or 6 watt TDP part.
Wow.
And you still have the extra core logic in there. So you're talking about 7 watts TDP versus 2 to 4 watts for the AMD part. So yeah, if they can actually deliver this at the speeds and the wattage and the power draw that they're hoping for, then yeah, I mean this is huge for them, and they've suddenly got a huge advantage in this tablet market.
Cool. All right, a couple of other things that are interesting that we have seen this week. One, you can expect a review probably by the next podcast of the ASUS Republic of Gamers Matrix GeForce GTX 580 1.5 gigabyte graphics card.
If you put those right in front of your eyes, you look like an owl.
You always have something funny to say when I'm holding up graphics cards in front of me. Last time I think I looked like Cthulhu when I was using that 460 card.
Oh, that wireless one, that was Cthulhu.
Yeah. So here's the ASUS Matrix GTX 580. Keep in mind, this is a single GPU card still. This is not a dual GPU card. You can see the brackets for here. This is actually a resistor, is it not? Yeah, it looks like a chip, but it's high density. It's not quite as heavy as the Aries card, but it's very large. You can see it takes up 3
triple slot
slots, dual DVI, HDMI.
Hey, you got
display,
buttons on it.
and a button. That if you overclock it, so the ASUS cards, the Matrix cards have that cool feature where once you overclock it, you can burn that into the BIOS of the graphics card. So you don't need software running. You can install this on a Linux machine. You can install this on, anything you want, and you don't have to worry about having the software on it to make it overclocked anymore. So you could get this card, overclock it, and then give it to your friend, and he doesn't have to worry about software and settings or that kind of stuff. So that's pretty cool. But this button lets you reset it and go back to the default settings on the card should you maybe have pushed things too far.
And it's got points on it for multimeters, too.
Yep, it does right up back here. You'll see there's 2 8-pin power connectors instead of the 8 and 6. And then up here in this corner, you'll see at the top, there is the power meter contact points there. And you notice the 3 buttons. The red button says 100%, I think, or something like that. That is, you push that button and the fans go to 100% automatically. So loud, I guess. The plus and minus do what we think motherboards do with plus and minus buttons on them right now. It increases the GPU clock rate or decreases it by 1 every time you push it. So this is meant for those people who are overclocking their systems, maybe doing like world record type things, or just somebody who has an open case and you feel ballsy and you want to go over there and push plus 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 times. And,
or 260.
Or 260 times, right. So that's obviously for on-the-fly things. And then we've got 3-way SLI support, should you want to do that. It's got that fancy matrix light on the top that changes colors based on temperature or load. I can't remember which one right now. I think it's load. But yes, it's a very nice looking graphics card, well engineered. Obviously not a stock reference design or anything like that. So we'll be reviewing this. My only disappointment with these types of cards, Josh, is they don't come overclocked very dramatically out of the box. I don't know what the clock speeds are on this now, but I know they're not pushing the limits of their own hardware, either because of warranty concerns or something like that, where they don't want to have to deal with it if it's overclocked a little bit too far. But it seems to me, I'm afraid we had a question on Twitch last week where somebody was buying a Matrix card for their husband or their wife. I think it was for their wife, for their anniversary, which wicked cool wife, I guess, right? But I told them only buy this card if she's going to want to overclock it. If she's going to want to tweak things and play around with the clock settings and that kind of deal. If she's just going to plug it in a game, you can get GTX 580 cards much cheaper, and that will have very similar performance. But if they were to push the overclock settings on this out of the box, I'd have more of a reason to recommend it to even those people that don't want to overclock all the time necessarily. So,
yeah, I mean this is a niche product, obviously, and it's appeal to those who really want to push it and those who don't know any better and will still buy it.
Agreed. People who have a lot of money, which apparently this guy did. Hey, but like I said, it was funny. I think the email was that he wasn't a gamer, but his wife was, and he knew enough to pick that this was a graphics card she would like. And I was like, that's awesome. And then I told him that he should play more PC games because not a lot of guys get that.
Have wives that do that.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
A couple of other quick things to touch on. We have 2 videos. The first one we won't bother going too much into here. It's a quick look at the Corsair Special Edition White Graphite Series 600T, which is a lot of words that say a white version of the 600T.
It's a Stormtrooper case. The Forest Moon of Endor Stormtrooper case.
It's very cool looking. I was a fan of the 600T before, and it's all black version. This one makes it just stand out a little bit more. I mean, it's not dramatically different. The components are almost identical, but the white finish on it just makes it stand out a little bit more, right? It's kind of cool. The only difference in the design is actually that the side panel there that you can see in the pictures on the site, or if you view our video, look at it is that it comes with a window, but it also ships in the box with a mesh side panel. So if you don't want the window, you can replace it with this mesh that actually will allow you to mount 4 more 120 millimeter fans on it. So that's actually pretty cool. You get that little option. You don't have to worry about buying something off of Corsair's website or something like that and having it shipped to you. You have both options for you there. And it's about $30 more, and that pays for the extra side panel integration option and then the finish of white paint, I guess. So $180 is what that's going to cost. $170 to $180. That's still pretty expensive for a case for most users. The standard 600 TU is about $140 to $150. So you kind of, to me, once you get over $150, it's kind of like, now you're talking about like a really kind of expensive case. So I'll be curious to see how successful this is, even though they do call it a limited edition for a reason, I guess. But I think it looks pretty nice. And finally, the what's that?
Pretty.
Yes, pretty. And finally, the last thing is actually something we posted up right before the podcast recording started, and this is something that might be worth a little bit more discussion. This is actually, I guess I linked to the wrong thing in the show notes there. Oh, did you? Okay. So you have to refresh the show notes if you want a link of that. There we go. Okay. This is a video perspective that first, not only is the first launch period for our completely new intro, which I think turned out pretty well, but also we talked about overclocking in our original AMD Llano review, which you can look at there, but we didn't really look at how overclocking affected gaming performance, and it's actually pretty substantial. Overclocking on Llano is not complicated necessarily, it's just a little different, so you have to kind of pay attention to things. There's a reference clock, base clock of 100 megahertz. Everything is run off of that. Your Northbridge frequency, your CPU frequency, your GPU frequency, DDR3 memory frequency. I don't know about PCI Express bus and that kind of thing, actually. Do you know, Josh?
Say that again?
Is the PCI Express bus and that kind of stuff based on the host clock frequency?
It might be, and so you need to double-check with the BIOS because it could be affected by that because it is part of the Encore or the Northbridge portion, and oftentimes that is separate from the base clock, but I don't know.
So the base clock affects basically everything on the CPU. So and it works pretty well. We were able to push, the A8 3850, which is a 2.9 gigahertz part. We moved it from a base clock of 100 to 133 megahertz, but then we took the multiplier down on it. These processors are multiplier locked in that you can't go higher than what the maximum is on the processor, but you can definitely go lower. So we took the multiplier from 29 to 27, I believe, in this video, and that gave us a 3.59, 3.6 gigahertz clock speed, which is a really nice boost over the 2.9. But I think more importantly, that took the GPU clock from 600 to 800 megahertz. So now we've got a faster processor, and we've got faster graphics, and it took our memory from 1333 megahertz to 1776 megahertz. So all three of the primary performance aspects are overclocked.
So what did you have memory running at for
1776.
1776. How patriotic for July 4th.
I know, exactly. And so, we had the memory set in the BIOS at DDR 1333, but then because of the overclocked base frequency, it was running at 1776 or thereabouts. So that was the settings of everything. And, we ran 3D Mark 11, Left 4 Dead 2, Dirt 3, about 5 or 6 different games, just real quickly running through these tests. The performance went up between 29 and 32%, pretty much across the board. This was tested at 1680 by 1050, medium-ish quality settings, which basically means mediums for most of these games. We had to adjust maybe a couple of other things, most of that with anti-aliasing turned off. But kind of, your mainstream performance level settings. So, and I thought a 30% performance improvement, like I said, across the board was actually pretty impressive. The specific numbers might not be that big of a deal, I guess. But if you look at, if you're going from that's a noticeable difference, right? That's something.
If I improved by 33%, I'd go from 220 pounds to 295.
That's a hell of an improvement, if you ask me.
It is. I mean, that's significant.
Not quite linebacker territory, but not bad.
It's interesting. It's not, like I say in the kind of the post with that video. It's not going to take your Llano system and make it perform like a $200 GPU. Nothing's going to be able to do that. But if you have one of these systems, if you bought a platform for this and you're comfortable overclocking, there's no reason to not spend an hour and tweak the memory, tweak the base clock, that kind of thing, until you find where you can overclock it to and just get that free performance out of it. The number that comes up right in the thumbnail for the video is frame rate goes from 28 to 37 for Battlefield Bad Company 2. And again, when you're talking 9 or 10 frames per second at those levels, that's noticeable. Now, if you decrease image quality settings, you might take it from 50 to 65. And that's, again, going to be pretty noticeable. So if you're a PC enthusiast and you build one of these systems for a friend or your mom or somebody that you think is going to do even mainstream gaming, it might be worth moving that base clock from 100 to 115 to 120, something that's light and easy, not going to stress it. You don't have to worry about voltages or anything like that, and see what you get out of there. So check out that video that we posted. It's titled Video Perspective AMD A-series APU Overclocking and Gaming Performance, both for the brand new shiny intro, as well as the information contained therein. So,
shiny.
There you go. Mm-hmm. Anybody else have any last-minute news items they want to discuss before we get into the hardware-software picks of the week?
QuakeCon and beer.
Okay, we do have QuakeCon. Anything before we get to that?
And beer.
The Royals still haven't gotten the hello to my country yet.
Okay. That at 11. Anything else coming on at 10? No? Okay.
Let me look around. Do I want to see something fun?
Oh, gosh.
Uh-oh.
Is it hardware related?
Does it involve
specifically computer hardware related?
Yes, I finally got one of these in.
Ooh.
Crosshair 5.
Oh, 5, yeah.
There you go. Nice big motherboard.
All right.
5.
Good thing these boxes have windows. Otherwise, that would have been a horrible show and tell.
You would never see the contents.
All right. Quakecon Reminder, again, August 4th through the 7th, I believe, we will be in Dallas covering QuakeCon. We will be having a PC Perspective hardware workshop. We will be giving away lots of things. We will be one of the projects that Ken and I have here at the office is to pack up all the stuff that I do not want to store anymore. This could be a white 600T case. This could be a Antec case, 700D. Probably not the ASUS Aries card. That's probably not on the list. But a bunch of hardware that we have here personally that we're trying to give away, we will give away at the show, as well as dozens and dozens of graphics cards and prizes and motherboards and processors and all that type of good stuff. We're still in the middle of organizing all of that. But it will be... I have told NVIDIA that they needed to bring Snuggies. So I said, if we didn't have Snuggies, the show is going to be a letdown. If you were there last year, you understand
Well, there will
why.
be a riot if there are no Snuggies.
Yeah, it was like $800.
It'll be Vancouver after the Stanley Cup.
Here's this prototype unobtainium video card that won't be out for another month, and then here's a Snuggie. And then, the people are going nuts for the Snuggies.
They chose the Snuggies. I don't get it. Maybe NVIDIA.
See, you should grab the video card. It's going to weigh about 50 pounds, so you can smack one of us over the head, grab the Snuggie, and go.
Don't give them
Just
ideas.
saying.
Smack Alan. He's way lighter.
No. I will dodge it.
So QuakeCon, if you don't know what it is, it's a giant gaming LAN party. If you want to celebrate PC gaming, this is the place to do it. There will be console gaming there. There will be booths and expos and people showing off cool things. I imagine AMD will be there, NVIDIA will be there, those types of guys. So if you want to go there and see some of the new tech that maybe you don't get to see very often, if you can drive to Dallas, definitely come. A lot of us will be there. We don't know exactly who.
Me.
And we will be doing a workshop there. So you get to come hang out with us for a couple of hours, maybe win some prizes. And Josh keeps telling everybody I'll buy them a beer. So you got to find me a guess for that to happen.
I'm just hoping you'll buy me a beer. Or 7.
As long as it's after the workshop, absolutely.
But you know what? It could make the workshop so much more fun.
Yeah, it could, or it could end in.
It's kind of a large stage.
In injuries and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and more fun.
Or fun. All right,
more
hardware
fun.
software picks of the week. I don't really have a specific one. It's kind of based around Llano, and my pick is hopefully Jeremy and I need to discuss some things about the hardware workshop, the budget system, whether or not we're going to go with a Core i3 based system.
I'm so torn.
Or Llano based system.
And I don't picture people paying for a gaming system at that low, in which case for general CPU usage, Sandy Bridge is a bit better, but
we've kind of always built
better,
our hardware leaderboard systems around budget gaming and that kind of stuff, right? So budget, mainstream, that's kind of what we do, is right. We kind of built them around gaming, so we'll have to see what that comes out to be when we look at everything. Yeah. But I mean, I built a system on Newegg, $139 for the fastest processor, $99 for the motherboard, $35 for memory. What else did I have to buy? $54 for a 1 terabyte hard drive and $44 for a power supply, and $50 for like a thermal taker, an Antec 300. Some good, not cheap ass case type of thing. And it was like $420, $430. Had this complete rig built, ready to go, everything covered. Obviously there's upgrades you can go. Do you add discrete graphics to it for dual GPU? Do you add SSD? I think when you start getting into those things, you start pricing yourself out of Llano territory. You need to be looking at Sandy Bridge again. But for that $400 system, I think it makes a compelling option. So
can play Morrowind like a champ.
Like a boss.
Not on the Sandy Bridge.
Right, exactly. So,
well, although it does have like an ancient 4670 for about $53 or something. It's actually a ridiculous price compared to what you can get out of it.
Right. Cool.
But
so that's my pick. My pick is look at these systems. They are now for sale as of today. So go check those out. Like I said, read our review. If you read all 10,000 plus words of it, God bless you. And CPU you're gonna sacrifice for the GPU performance, and it's just a matter of where you think your benefit's going to be. Do you want to game on a system of this caliber, or do you want to make sure you have enough CPU horsepower to do transcoding and that kind of stuff on this type of system? So keep that in mind, and then we will pass it on to Jeremy for his pick this week.
Well, whichever one of us wins, whether we go with the Llano system or the really cheap i3 2100 system,
yep,
you're going to want an HDMI cord. And there's a company over in the UK that I really, really have to respect, because they're taking it to the guys that have the HDMI cord section. We have the $20, the $30, the $50 for 10-foot, the $180 for 3-foot, because that's the optically polarized, gold-plated, platinum-infused, oxygen-free. The ones and zeros will get through the cable just that much faster. Sorry. It's a digital system. It works or it doesn't. As long as you buy the proper HDMI 1.3, 1.4, depending on what you want to be passing through it, it doesn't matter if you go to Monster Cable and buy the stuff that costs $188 a foot. It's not going to help. So these guys will send a free HDMI cable. One of the ones they sell for about £5, call it $8 Canadian, $10 American, and they'll send it to you for free if you bought a TV from one of their competitors. You don't even have to have bought the stupidly expensive HDMI cable. They'll just send it to you anyways to prove that it's a cable. Digital in this case means it works or it don't work. S-video, okay. Sometimes those pins would break off and it'd sort of work and it sort of wouldn't. HDMI, it's like USB. It works or it doesn't.
That guy on his little Segway is going to come and kill you.
I'm sure he'll run me over.
The monster cable guy from Vegas.
It'll take him a while, but he'll run me over. So thumbs up to Kogan Technologies for doing that. And I hope somebody over here in the North American continent does it as well.
And the article just says from July 1st. I didn't even see an end date. It's just like starting now.
I doubt there is an end date. It's just here, guys. If you want to be a moron, pay, but here, have a cable.
Wow.
All right. Next on our list, Josh, you have some stuff.
Memory, oddly enough. I talked about that, and, about 4-5 months ago, I actually ordered this stuff for about $150. It was the G-Skill DDR3 1600 2x4 gigabyte memory kits, and now you can get the damn things for $75 shipped.
It's half.
Second day shipping. Half! If you remember Eddie Murphy talking about divorce, half. No?
It's like Moore's Law for prices.
Yeah, it's insane that you can get 8
If Moore
gigs
was a
of
sadist.
fast memory for $75.
Nice. Cool.
I ask myself, why, oh why?
Do you get an answer?
Did you what?
No,
Why,
because
did you buy
the answer
memory
is
when you needed
I
it?
should have, bought it 6 months later.
No, you can't do that to yourself.
But I just did.
I agree.
But he's married.
Yeah.
No, it's the opposite. Alan, what do you got? Hardware, software. Pick.
Software that affects your hardware. And in my other line of work, I enjoy an elegant hack. So this is definitely an elegant hack. There is a version 3 of jailbreakme.com, which works on any kind of Apple device. I'm sure Steve Jobs is very pissed off right now. So basically you go with whatever iPhone, iPod Touch, iPad, including iPad 2, by the way. It's a userland jailbreak. You go to jailbreakme.com. It works its magic. A few seconds go by, and then poof, you have a jailbroken whatever it is. And then the first thing you should do is then if you go to jailbreakme.com, there's like a little info section or whatnot. It's more information, and they give you a little note that says, okay, once you are jailbroken, you should apply the patch that patches the same exploit that they used to jailbreak your device. Because realize this exploit is out there in the wild, so there could potentially be a website that also exploits this that messes up whatever your device might be, right?
Oh, shit.
So think about
That's
that,
awesome.
right? It's reason number one to jailbreak whatever your Apple
It's
device
for security.
is so that you could patch the vulnerability that they used to jailbreak it, which is
That's brilliant.
take that for what
That's
it's
utterly
worth.
brilliant.
And I think it's a PDF based exploit, just like the last time around. So there's like a PDF fix version 2 or something for fix.
Yeah, because
Only
that works
available
on
through
the iPad 2 as well, doesn't it?
It affects the exploit affects everything. Everything current. Until iOS 5 comes out. Actually, I think this exploit is still like the iOS 5 beta 2 that's out right now. I think that same exploit actually works on it. I don't think jailbreak me works on that, but so even like the most recent beta is still vulnerable to that particular kind of an exploit.
Nice.
Gotcha. Cool. I still have an original iPad, and I don't do for much. Actually, it works as a really nice video prompter in front of the camera when we need to do that kind of stuff.
Really? You just don't stream Pandora from it?
No.
No, he's got a Zune for that.
Oh.
Nope.
Still.
It's kind of a wasted piece of hardware. So anyway, because we just saw Jeremy pour the last bit of beer out of his bottle, I think it's a good time to end the show. You can find us, of course, pcper.com or pcper.com/podcast is the URL. You can find all of these wonderful episodes. I think this particular episode was fantastic, and that you'll want to share it
Outstanding.
on any and all technical outlets and forums. If you're on Twitter, tell everybody on Twitter about it. You frequent a favorite
Google Plus.
What do they do? What do the kids do these days? Do they hang out in chat rooms still? If you got a favorite tech chat room,
Oh yeah, hey, Google Plus invites are open for everybody now. Just happened while we were recording.
oh okay.
So
if
invite them
you-
and tell them about us while you're inviting them.
you can find me on Google Plus. Just search for Ryan Shrout, and you'll find me. I guess I don't know how that works at all. I've No idea how you
We're
search
still
and find somebody on
learning.
Google Plus.
It's about circles or something.
Wait, Ryan, you just said you don't know how to search on Google? Is that what you just
On
said?
Google Plus, there's no search capability really on Google Plus.
I don't
So-
know.
Yes.
Think about it. What else is there? Twitter.com/Ryan Shroud or pcper. Facebook.com/pcper. Go there. We post all of our news stories there as well. And YouTube.com/pcper. What other URLs do we have? I don't know. That's probably good enough. Thank you for listening. Thanks everybody in the chat room for hanging out. If you want to watch us record the show live, sure, why not? Live.twit.tv is the URL for that. We record it every Wednesday or most Wednesdays at or about 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. And if you want to see this video version, we actually do post video versions on YouTube at that youtube.com/pcper address, or you can go to pcper.com/podcast, and we list the video in line with the show notes for each episode. So I guess that is going to round up the 161st episode of the PC Perspective Podcast. That's a lot of episodes, guys.
Yeah.
Do you know how much time I've wasted on you, Ryan?
Not as much time as I've wasted on you.
Well, I think you've got a good point there.
So we will see everybody here next week. Thanks for listening. I'm Ryan Shrout.
We will have voicemails someday again. I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
And I'm Al Malventano.
And no promises on those voicemails.